Good morning and welcome to Drew's Book Reviews. Today we are going to be talking about Wrath of Empire by Brian McClellan. This is the second book in the Gods of Blood and Powder trilogy, which is the second book from the Powder Mage trilogy world, or Powder Mage world, that Brian McClellan has put together. So stay tuned and check it out. Good morning. So, Wrath of Empire by Brian McClellan. This is part of the exciting, action-packed fantasy, guns and fantasy world of the Powder Mage worlds, which you have to check out. This is just a fantastic, amazing fantasy book, flintlock fantasy. So you got your guns and you've got your magic all mixed into the whole world that's been created by Brian McClellan. Now this one is actually the second book of the Gods of Blood and Powder trilogy. The first trilogy just being called the Powder Mage trilogy, starting with Blood of Empire. No, sorry, not Blood of Empire. That's actually the third one. This one is the first Powder Mage trilogy actually starts with Promise of Blood, and believe me, that one delivers on its promise of blood. Well, one of the great things about the Powder Mage trilogy, guns and magic, I mean, this just works so well together in the way that Brian McClellan has actually written his stories. So for those of you that have not read anything Powder Mage yet, basically the whole concept behind the magic system in the world that's been created with the Powder Mages is, well, the whole magic system is based off of basically sniffing powder or snorting powder. So it's kind of really got that drug style to it, just like sniffing cocaine, where the mages or the people that use power, they have the ability to enhance themselves and obtain these magical abilities in order to make themselves better, stronger, faster, better fighters all around. They do this essentially by snorting or sniffing gunpowder. So it's like a drug high, which they run off of. They get faster, stronger abilities. They're able to do things much more effectively in an almost a superhuman manner as they do so. So this book specifically, as I mentioned, is actually the second book in the Gods of Blood and Powder trilogy, which is the second Powder Mage trilogy. So Wrath of Empire. Starting off with Sins of Empire. So within this book, we've got three basic storylines that are happening with these characters. We've got Michael, who's left behind in Landfall after the Dynzine invasion and taking over and occupying the city. He is trying to root out Fetrasta's source of information within that city. So he's trying to find her and get her out. So in order to do that, he has to infiltrate the Dynzine government that has been set up. And then we've got Mad Ben Stike. His ultimate objective, or his storyline, is all about seeking revenge against those that have betrayed him. And of course, Mad Ben Stike is called Mad Ben Stike for a reason. The guy's literally crazy and insane. But as he's going through this process of seeking vengeance and killing off those who harmed him, those who betrayed him, he starts to realize some inner truths about himself, about how he's changed, especially now that he finds himself caring for a young girl named Celine and basically having to adopt her as his adoptive daughter. And he's come to realize some things about himself, about his path of revenge, and how perhaps it's just not what he expected, and he's changed in ways that he didn't expect as well. So it's kind of seeing his storyline through the eyes of a vengeance tale, essentially. Really interesting. And then we've got Tennille, Touchant, and Valora, who find themselves in this gold rush town on the verge of breaking down into war itself from two different main gold mining companies. who are seeking to control the town and the wealth of gold in the area. And they get caught up in that as they're out looking for what's termed the Godstone. Now, the Godstone is this ancient relic of intense and unimaginable power. There are 3 of them, and when used in conjunction, have effectively the ability to create gods. And of course, the last time that happened, all hell broke loose, and nothing was as it should be, and everything was just a complete mess. So they find themselves getting caught up in this turf war between gold miners, essentially, in this gold rush town, because this happens to be where the Godstone is, and of course the Dainteen are invading, and they want the Godstone for themselves. And just all around it is action-packed from start to finish. I absolutely love the characters. I like the character of Mad Ben Stike, but I've always kind of enjoyed those crazy characters that basically are the ones that are nuts, that are insane. Those are the kind of characters I've always enjoyed and liked the best myself personally. And overall, I am just absolutely loving Brian McClellan's Powder Mage world, and just fantastic. It's action-packed, relentlessly thrilling. Just overall, it is an amazing, fun, high-paced, high-adventure, high-action type of read. And definitely, you know, if you're into the whole guns and magic thing, this is definitely some writing that you've got to check out if you haven't already. Starting with the Promise of Blood is where it all starts in the Powder Mage world. And this Wrath of Empire, I've got the final one, Blood of Empire, on order. I haven't received it yet, but you can bet I will be getting to Blood of Empire eventually for the 3rd book in the Gods of Blood and Powder trilogy. One thing that is kind of important to note about this series, we touched a little bit on how the magic system works. It's derived their power through basically getting high, like a drug high, from the gunpowder itself. Now, not everybody has the ability to basically tap into the magical powers behind this. There are basically the non-magic users who have no abilities whatsoever. There is the knacked. These are people with kind of like minor abilities to basically have magical abilities. They don't necessarily need gunpowder in order to unlock their magical abilities, but there are minor things like being able to sense who is a powder mage and who is not, so who has this ability to unlock the magical powers and forces within that powder itself. But then there's the powder mages themselves. These are the ones that have the ability to unlock that power, to be able to utilize the gunpowder to open up their magical abilities. And so there's basically 3 different classes of people within that. Now, actually, one unique thing about Brian McClellan's writing, well, maybe it's not unique, maybe that's the wrong word, choice of words, but one thing I really liked about Brian McClellan's writing is a lot of fantasy books and a lot of things like that is you have your very stereotypical alignment of men's and women's roles, in which the men are in the military, they're the ones that are in charge, and that kind of thing. Within Brian McClellan's writing, that's not really the case at all. Women are both generals, they're soldiers, they're politicians, and there really is no separation of the sexes essentially within his writing. Both genders, both sexes essentially have the abilities to be in positions of power and authority, just the same as men. There is no limitations, there's no restrictions. It's there. So we've got both men and women at the head of armies, both men and women are generals, both men and women are politicians. And I just think that is really, really cool the way that's written. And I love that it's written in a way that says this is just the normal way things are. This is just what's expected. None of the characters seem to have a problem with that. It's just normal for them. It's completely unexpected. So there is that equality between men and women within the writing of this book and within the whole Powder Mage world. And I really like that aspect of it. Because so many writers, especially when it comes to fantasy, is, they write it saying that there are certain roles designated for each gender, essentially, in many ways. So this is really good, the way that, or if they're not writing about specifically stating that there are certain roles, it's just very rare to see a writer that has women in those positions of authority and power within their writing, and the characters within the world behaving as if this is just commonplace and normal, without a second thought, without any reference or comment to their gender and their role, merely referring to characters as she or her, as far as what's going on in their interactions, without reference to their particular position as being anything other than normal. And I think that that is a really awesome aspect to the writings, one I've certainly enjoyed. And definitely, when all said and done, I recommend Brian McClellan as a writer, not just this series, but as a writer as well. Fantastic. Absolutely loving it. It really is good writing. So go check it out. And of course, check out the Brian McClellan playlist on this channel as well. So those are just my thoughts on Wrath of Empire, the second book in the Gods of Blood and Powder trilogy. And we will, of course, see you next time on the next episode of Drew's Book Reviews. Until then, keep on reading. Bye.